Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial I'll be teaching you how I achieved this lovely BUBU gown. It's very easy to make, so please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like my videos, and enjoy this tutorial. Okay, so the materials needed are our scissors, our tape rule, of course our tailor's chalk, the French curve, and our office pin, and of course the fabric that we would be working on. So now I'm going to measure 61 inches as the person's length. So that's the tip of the Ankara fabric. That's the tip. So it's the tip I'll be using to measure the full length of the person, which is 61. So I first measured 60, then added 1 inch, that's 61. So I added extra 3 inches for the band. That's for the sewing allowance, the upper part and the down part. So what I did next was I folded it into 4 places like this. So you see, I didn't cut anything out, not yet. So the next thing I would measure is the shoulder. So that was what I measured next. And the sleeve length I'm working on is 12 inches. So I measured 12 inches out like that. So what I have left is 1.5 inches. So I'll be folding that 1.5 inches as sewing allowance for the sleeve. So at the upper part here, I measured 0.5 inches for the sewing allowance. That's the upper part sewing allowance. So I needed to measure that out before I start my normal measurements. So that place looks curved. I needed my French curve, which I used to get a straight line. Guys, BUBU is now what is trending. Like, people are really sewing it, and it's very easy to make. No stress at all. So this part, I'm taking it down by 1 inch because that's the shoulder slope. Like, I don't want it to be standing on my body, on the person's body, sorry. So this part, the round sleeve, I made it 9 inches, then added 1.5 inch, so that is 10.5 inches. So the 9 inches is round together is 18 inches divided by 2, gave me that 9 inches. So I added 1.5 inch as the sewing allowance. So what I did next was measure out the 64 inches, which I measured at the beginning of the tutorial. So the 64 inches is what I'm getting right now. That's the length. So I want to separate it from the other fabric so that I can work on that. So just measure 64, 3 inches for the sewing allowance. So I'm holding 0.5 inch at the upper part, then 2.5 inches at the down part here. So I cut it out. So from the 0.5 inch sewing allowance, I would measure the quarter length, which is 15 inches, then the half length, which is 18 inches. The quarter length is from the shoulder to the under bust, while the half length is to the waist. So I minus 3 inches upward to get the bust point. So the hip is 8 inches from the waist. That's how I get my hip. So 50 inches is the person's hip divided by 4, gave me 12.5 inches. So the way I get my measurements, in case I don't have calculator or anything, I would fold my tape rule into 4 places like this. Now I place the tip of the tape rule on 50 inches, which gave me 25 inches. So I place the tip on that 25 inches that's folded into 4 places, which gave me the 12.5 inches. So that's the trick I normally use to get my measurement. So the hip is 12 inches, so I added 3 inches to it normally, plus 1 inch sewing allowance. So all the measurements I'm adding to it now is 4 inches, which gave me 16.5 inches. So I'm measuring the 16.5 inches all round. So I'm measuring it all round. So that's what I'm going to use to get it. You can see it's as simple as ABC. At the end of the day, I did not even use the quarter length, the half length that I measured. All I needed was that hip measurement. So in case in your situation the breast is like bigger than the hip, so please make sure you use the breast as the measurement. The bigger part should be used as the measurement. So that's it. So I just made sure I pin everything down neatly. So the next thing I did was to chalk it out again, that 0.5 inch, then the 1 inch that I want to use as the shoulder slope. So I slanted it from the shoulder where I began the sleeve measurement. So the wideness of the neck is 3.5 inches, while the length, so this length I'm measuring is for the back, that's 1.5 inch. So don't cut it out yet. That's the sign I made now. So from that upper part to the length of the front part is 8 inches. So I made the wideness of that down part 1/4. So I'm just going to chalk it from that 3.5 inches to the 1/4. So I'll slant it like that. So that's for the front measurement. So this back measurement now, I'll curve it. Remember, the back measurement is 1.5 inch. I just curved it out. So the next thing I did was cut it out. So the cutting stopped at that shoulder. So do not cut the 2 out yet. Like, don't cut out the 8 inches that you measured. So the first thing I did was cut out the 1.5 inch for the neck part. So I got to cut every other thing out. So cutting of and sewing of BUBU is a very easy step. There is no stress in it. So at the down part I added 2.5 inches. So that's what I chalked out, and 16 inches for the slit. That's where the slit would start from. So make sure you notch it out so that when you are sewing it's easy to get. So the next thing I did is notch out everything, including the sleeve part. So I separated it next before I cut it out. Make sure the one under is not stuck. Make sure you remove it, because once you make the mistake of cutting it, that's it. So the next thing I did was measure the neck round, because I want to cut out the part that I will be adding. So you see that I left 1/2 inch at the upper part. So that's the sewing allowance. So what I measured round was 9.5 inches. So I had to measure the back too. I left the 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So what I measured here was 4 inches. So I added it together, which gave me 13.5 inches. So that's what I'll use to get the plain fabric that I'll be adding to the neck part. So this is the plain material I'm using. I folded it into 2 already. So I'm folding it again like this. So what I measured is 3 inches for the wideness of the band. 3 inches all around. Then the next thing I'm measuring is 15.5 inches. We measured 13.5 for the wideness, that's all round. It was 13.5 we measured, but I added 2 inches just in case. So now the next thing I'm measuring is the down parts of the design, of the neck design. I measured 7 inches there. So I came down by 1/2 inch, that's 6.5 inches. That's what I measured there. So the length of the down part is 13 inches. So I measured 13 inches now. Then the length from there to the 6.5 that I measured is 7.5 inches. So I just slanted it from that 13 inches to the 7.5 inches. So the next thing I will do is fold 1/2 inches when I'm sewing, but for now I'll be placing this on the main fabric. So that's the part that it's going to be on the main fabric. The middle is going to be on each other. So I'll be chalking out this part. I need to cut out a plain material, a plain fabric for that part too. So this is the plain fabric. You can see that the front part is facing the upside. So that's how it's going to be. The front part is going to be on the front part of the Ankara, on it, not facing each other. So that is why I placed it under like that. So I'm chalking it out now, so that I'll get the actual measurements that I need. Just make sure it doesn't shift. And if it shifts, make sure you place it very well. Make sure it corresponds. then you can go ahead and cut it out. So because the design is going to be on the left side, that's why this cutting tool is on the left side. So in case yours is going to be on the right side, then you have to place it the other way around. So I added 1/2 inch at the down part for the sewing allowance that I'll be folding in. So now this is the sewing part. I already added stay to my plain fabric. I added stay to everything that I cut out. What I would be sewing first is the shoulder. Make sure the face of the shoulder, the fabric are facing each other. The face of the back and the face of the front are facing each other. What you do next is fold the plain fabric in by 1/2 inch there. So this is what I did. I folded it in by 1/2 inch. Then just do a straight sewing. So this is the second side too. I'm sewing the second shoulder side. So this part, this is the back part. I needed to get the middle of the back part, so I had to notch it. Then I'm notching out the plain fabric too. That's the middle too, so that I'll get the accurate. I just want everything to be accurate. You can see that I'm starting the measurement from the middle to the beginning of the neck. So that's the beginning part of the neck. So this part, I should have slanted it right from the cutting part. Should have slanted it right from the cutting part, but I'm going to slant it now with this plain fabric. I'll slant it together. Yeah, so that's what I did. I slanted it in by 1/2 inch. Then I placed my neck, the plain fabric on it. Then you start your sewing exactly from that point that you slanted. That's where the sewing will start from, which I did. Then you sew it round. Make sure you are placing it nicely. Then you can see that that middle is on each other, that notched part. So it has to be exactly on each other, just to make it perfect. So this part, so I slanted it in. I cut it in by 1/2 inch. So I made sure I sew it exactly on that point. The next thing I did was notch it all around. Just be careful while notching so that you don't over notch it. So the next thing I did was arranged it, because it has to be very neat. So I needed to arrange it very well. Just take your time and do this part. Okay, that place seems to be folding, so I had to like slant it a little bit so that it stays in place. So just take your time and do that part. It must not be squeezed. It has to be neatly placed. So that's why you must take your time doing that. Okay, so the next thing I did was use a pin to hold it in place. So I'll be sewing that part down. So I need to use my pin. You see that I had to hold it in place. It must not shift. The moment it shifts, that means it's not going to be straight again. It's not going to balance. So you have to adjust it again. It just has to be perfect. That's the point. So what I did next was sew it in by 1/2 inch. So it started from the first slant to the other slant. Then you can cut out the excess. But before you cut out the excess, just make sure you open it up first. Then make sure it's laid. make sure it's neat like this before you cut it out, so you can see all those angles, that there is no folding, no squeezing there. So that's what you need to get. That's the purpose of this style in the first place. So this part, I ironed the middle already. I ironed it before sewing, but it's not obvious, so I had to use chalk so that it will be obvious. Then I ironed the middle part to the plain material too. So I ironed the middle part so that the middle of both will be on each other. So the middle of both will be on each other. This plain part too. So you can see that I'm placing it on top of the part that I just sewed now. So I folded that part, I folded it in by 1/2 inch. So I'm folding the sides too. Just make sure the middle is on each other. So this part, I'll continue the sewing straight down all round. You can see I'm taking my time there because I want it to be neatly placed. I don't want anything folding, I don't want anything bulging. I just want it to be flat and neat. So just sew it round by 1/2 inch. So this is what you have after you are done with it. So this is the finished look of it. The next thing I did was folded the sleeve. You know, we measured 1.5 inch as the remaining allowance for the sleeve band. So this is the 1.5 inches that I'm folding in. So I already did the same to the other side too, just folding the 1.5 inches. Then I'm folding it like this. Then I'll be joining the sleeve together, which is 9.5 inches for the normal measurement. I wanted to do it 9 inches, but I realized let me make it wider, which is 9.5 inches. So all together will be 19 inches. I'm holding the sides by 1 inch. So I'll hold it to that notched part. That's the slit, where the slit will be starting from. I already did the same to the other side too. This is the down part that I want to fold in now. You know, I measured 2.5 inches at the beginning of the tutorial for the down part. So this is the 2.5 inches. I'm folding in 1/2 inch. Then the remaining part will be 2 inches. Then that's the slit part. I folded the slit part into half. Then I folded it 2 times. So that's 1 inch for the slit part, the side slit. Remember, I used the side allowance as 1 inch. So that's why I'm folding the slit part into 1 inch. So just take your time doing that. So that's the slit part. I just want you to get the exact way to sew your slit part too. The next thing I'll do is fold it in before I get to the down part. Fold it in by that 2.5 inches, then the 1/2 inch. So that's it. Just do the same to all the sides round, and your outfit is ready.
Please guys, ironing and weaving, that's the finishing of the clothes. You have to do a inner weaving for it so that it will look perfect, and you have to iron it. The next thing I did was added stones. I used my picker to add the stones, so I just placed it on my stoning machine, and that's it. You have your perfect outfit. Please, if you enjoyed today's tutorial, don't forget to comment in the comment section, subscribe and share. Also watch out for my next video. Thank you.